Your neighbors seem normal until you find out what they're hiding. These people learned that lesson the hard way. We build our lives on a foundation of trust. But what happens when that foundation cracks, revealing the darkness that lives just a few feet away? Our first story begins in a place designed for blissful ignorance. A cul-de-sac where the lawns are perfectly manicured and the silence is only broken by the sound of sprinklers. For Chloe, moving in was a dream, a fresh start. Her neighbor to the left was a quiet, retired horticulturalist named Mr. Abernathy. His garden was his pride and joy, a riot of color that was the envy of the block. But her dog, Buster, hated him. He would stand at the fence, hackles raised, barking not at the man, but at a specific patch of soil beneath a canopy of unusually lush, blood-red roses. A sickly sweet smell, like overripe fruit and damp earth, always hung in the air there. An animal's instinct often picks up on things our rational minds are trained to ignore. We dismiss it as territorial behavior, nothing more. One night, Chloe was woken by a rhythmic thudding. She looked out her bedroom window. In the pale glow of a single solar lamp, Mr. Abernathy was digging. Not with a shovel, but a small hand trowel. Methodical, patient, like he had all the time in the world. The next morning, while watering her own lawn, she saw something glinting near the fence line. Half buried in the mud, caked with dirt, was a small silver earring, a delicate feather design. She pocketed it, assuming it was old, forgotten. That evening, the local news ran a story. A college student missing for 3 days. And in the photograph they showed, a smiling young woman with bright eyes. There, dangling from her left ear, was the identical silver feather. This is the point of no return. The moment a string of unsettling coincidences becomes a terrifying pattern. Chloe's blood ran cold. She bought a cheap security camera the next day, hiding it in the bird feeder that faced Mr. Abernathy's back door and his large potting shed. For 2 days, there was nothing. Then, on the third night, the footage showed the shed door creaking open. Mr. Abernathy emerged, hauling a heavy human-sized burlap sack. He struggled with its immense weight, dragging it toward the patch of red roses and leaving a disturbed path in the wet grass. She didn't wait to see more. She dialed 911, her voice a choked whisper. As she spoke to the dispatcher, she watched through her blinds. The quiet cul-de-sac was suddenly painted in strobing red and blue lights. The silence was absolute. When authorities investigated, they made a grim discovery. The pristine garden contained the remains of not 1, but 8 individuals. It's believed that Mr. Abernathy specifically cultivated plants known to mask certain organic odors, turning his beautiful garden into a carefully concealed burial ground. Sometimes the monster isn't digging graves in the yard. Sometimes it's just on the other side of the wall, listening to you breathe. Our second story takes place in a building that had seen better days. The paint peeled, the pipes groaned, and the walls were paper thin. For Liam, a student, it was all he could afford. His apartment was 2A. His neighbor was the enigma of 2B. No one ever saw the tenant of 2B. No mail was ever delivered. But there was always a sound, a low-frequency hum, almost subliminal. You wouldn't notice it at first, but once you did, you couldn't unhear it. It was a constant pressure in your ears. Then came the smell. It wasn't rot or decay. It was sharp, sterile, like the air after a lightning storm. The smell of ozone and burnt sugar that seeped from under the door of 2B and stung the back of your throat. In a city, anonymity is expected, but when a neighbor becomes a complete void, that void gets filled by our deepest fears. One morning, Liam found a symbol drawn in chalk on his door, right next to the peephole. It was a complex geometric shape with angles that seemed wrong, impossible. It made his eyes hurt to look at. He wiped it off with a wet cloth. The next day, it was back. Not in chalk, but faintly etched into the wood itself, as if the grain had been warped into the shape of the sigil. His headache started that day. The hum from 2B grew louder. His electronics began to fail whenever he was near their shared wall. His phone screen would fill with static. His laptop would freeze. The air in his own apartment felt electric, charged with a malevolent energy. We're surrounded by electromagnetic fields, but what we're seeing here isn't interference, it's an intrusion. One night, driven by a mix of fear and curiosity, Liam pressed a glass to the wall. He didn't hear a TV or music. He heard a wet, rhythmic clicking, and a sound like 1,000 whispers speaking in unison, a language that felt ancient and fundamentally wrong. Suddenly, the power in the entire building died. A profound, tomb-like silence fell, immediately broken by a deafening roar from 2B. A brilliant, pulsating violet light bled from under the door, casting dancing, distorted shadows down the hall. The next morning, the building was silent. The door to 2B was ajar. Liam, along with the superintendent, pushed it open. The apartment was empty. Not just empty of furniture, it was scrubbed clean, as if nothing had ever been there. In the exact center of the floor was a large circular scorch mark radiating outwards. What if the monsters don't hide in the dark? What if they move in, wave from the driveway, smile while they watch you sleep? Our third story is about the Harlows. To the residents of Sycamore Lane, they were perfect. A beautiful couple, 2 well-behaved children, a brand new SUV. They were a walking, talking portrait of the American dream. But Maya, their next-door neighbor, saw the cracks. Their smiles never quite reached their eyes. Their movements were too fluid, too synchronized. When they spoke, their voices lacked any real inflection, like a computer learning to mimic human speech. She watched them one afternoon playing catch in their yard. They never missed. The ball moved in silent, perfect arcs. There was no laughter, no friendly chatter. Just the rhythmic, soft thud of the ball hitting a glove. It was like watching 4 machines execute a program. The uncanny valley. That's the scientific term for it. When something looks almost human, but tiny imperfections trigger a primal sense of revulsion and fear. Maya's baby monitor would sometimes pick up stray frequencies. One night, it crackled to life with a signal from the Harlows house. It wasn't human voices. It was a series of high-pitched clicks and whistles, like a distorted recording of dolphins, but with a sharp metallic edge. She aimed her security camera at their living room window, hoping to catch something. And one night she did. The footage showed the entire family standing in a circle, perfectly still. Their heads were tilted back and their mouths were wide open, as if in a silent scream. Then, a pale, pulsing light began to emanate from their throats, illuminating the room in soft, sickly waves. They weren't screaming. They were communicating or recharging. This is the kind of evidence that shatters your worldview. It's impossible to rationalize. It's impossible to ignore. The final straw was when Maya's cat went missing. She asked Mr. Harlow if he'd seen it. He gave her that wide, empty smile. "We haven't seen anything out of the ordinary," he said. As he spoke, Maya saw the skin on his neck ripple, as if something was moving underneath. That night, she packed a bag. She was leaving. As she loaded her car, she risked one last look at the house next door. All 4 Harlows were standing on their front lawn, side by side, bathed in the cold light of a street lamp. They were watching her, and as she pulled away, they all raised their right hands and waved, a single, slow, perfectly synchronized gesture. It wasn't a farewell. It was a dismissal. Our final story is about a monster you can't see. It's about a voice on the airwaves, bleeding through the static from a place we were never meant to hear. Jenna lived in a rural community where her nearest neighbor was a quarter-mile down a dirt road. His name was Mr. Gable, an elderly ham radio enthusiast. A colossal skeletal antenna towered over his small house like a metal spider against the sky. Her smart speaker started acting strangely. In the dead of night, around 3 a.m., it would activate on its own, emitting bursts of static. And within that static, she could hear a faint, monotone voice, a human voice buried in the noise. Driven by a growing sense of dread, Jenna finally went to Mr. Gable's house. The door was unlocked. Inside, she found the radio room, the source of the broadcast. Mr. Gable was slumped in his chair, headset still on. It was clear he had been deceased for some time. The machinery, however, was still running, and the monotone voice was clearer here, a recording of what seemed to be his final, desperate broadcast. "It's not broadcasting," the looped voice said, a chilling revelation. "It's listening. It uses my voice as bait. Don't let it hear you. Don't let it..." The recording stopped. Absolute silence filled the room. Then a new sound came not from the old radio, but from Jenna's own smart speaker back at her house, audible even from across the yard. A perfectly clear digital voice. The new voice spoke her name. Jenna. It was no longer buried in static. It was pristine, cold, and intelligent. It had been using the old man's signal as a bridge to find a modern network, to find her. In the radio room, every screen suddenly flashed to life, displaying her face from her social media. The antenna outside groaned, as if turning to aim directly at her house. She was the new broadcast. "Be careful what you listen to in the dark. You are always tuned into something, and something is always listening back. We have found your frequency."